Hey everyone, welcome. Let's jump right into today's explainer. We are taking a deep dive into an incredibly fascinating devotional excerpt from 31 Days of Wisdom, and we're zeroing right in on Proverbs 4. Whether you're already super familiar with these ancient biblical texts or you're just here to explore their moral frameworks, what we're unpacking today offers some seriously urgent, timeless warnings about human nature. We've distilled the author's core arguments to focus purely on this one massive idea: how tiny, seemingly harmless compromises can lead to absolutely massive consequences. It's a gripping breakdown, so let's get right to it. Just listen to the sheer intensity in this quote. Avoid it, pass not by it, turn from it, and pass away. That is uncompromising. According to the author, this instruction was originally given by Solomon and directed by the Holy Spirit. And the text makes it super clear. These aren't just, gentle suggestions or casual life advice. No, this is a blaring siren of a warning to believers. The source states that ignoring this warning can cause tremendous problems. We're talking up to and including the loss of one's soul. You literally could not choose stronger words to tell someone to steer clear of the path of evil. It is the ultimate warning. But you've got to ask yourself, why such absolute language? What makes this path so incredibly dangerous that it takes 4 distinct commands just to say, run away? Well, let's look at the mechanics behind it. Okay, let's dive into this, because this concept right here, this is the absolute crux of the problem. Evil rarely just shows up as some massive life-ruining decision right out of the gate. I mean, if it did, we'd all run the other way immediately, right? Instead, it operates through subtle deception. It breeds complacency. The author paints this really vivid picture of evil practically waving its hands at us every single day, trying to convince us that the grass is greener over here. It actively tries to get us to drop our guard, whispering this exact insidious little question: what's one little sin gonna do? It desperately wants us to believe that a minor compromise, just a tiny step out of bounds, is no big deal, no real consequences. But our source material fiercely pushes back against this whole idea of the harmless little sin. Let's see how this actually builds. The author outlines a very specific, almost mechanical progression of wrongdoing here. So step 1 is the innocent beginning. The text argues that sin might start off looking entirely innocent, seemingly not bad at all. In fact, the source notes that Satan actively masks the destructive nature of it to keep that illusion going. But then, inevitably, we hit step 2, continuous growth. The author is crystal clear on this. All sin starts small, but it never, ever stays small. It doesn't remain static. If it's not actively dealt with, it grows. It demands more. And that leads right into step 3, total enslavement. The ultimate destination, according to the text, is being bound by a vice with absolutely zero way of escaping it on your own. It's a really sobering trajectory, going from one tiny step to total captivity. To really put that progression into perspective, the source gives us 3 stark, real-world examples. The author asserts that every alcoholic began with just one drink. Every drug addict started out with just one single hit. And every person who has ever been bound by pornography started with one peak. By objectively laying out these specific examples, the text is illustrating a universal principle within its framework. Monumental, life-altering traps always start with a single, seemingly microscopic compromise. The wide path to destruction is literally paved with these initial tiny steps that little whisper of evil told us were no big deal. So, if human nature leaves us this vulnerable to this snowball effect of enslavement, what's the solution? Where is the hope in this framework? Now, what's really interesting is how the text perfectly contrasts these 2 paths. First, we have the path of the wicked, which we've just been talking about. As we've seen, it's a wide path. Its destructive power is completely masked by Satan to look harmless, but it leads straight to destruction. The text even references Matthew 7:13 to point out that absolutely no life can be found going down this route. But then, directly opposed to this, the author provides the alternative, the right path. According to the text, this path is singularly defined by Jesus Christ and Him crucified. And the author makes a very exclusive, definitive claim here. They state that any other path is going to lead to damnation. That makes the cross not just an answer to man's problems, but the only answer. And that brings us to a really crucial distinction, understanding what the author actually means when they say the cross. The text is super specific here. When speaking of the cross, the author explicitly states they aren't just talking about a wooden beam, a physical, historical object. Rather, they're talking about the definitive spiritual action of what Christ accomplished. According to the text, it was at the cross where Satan and the demon powers of darkness were totally and completely defeated. It's where all sickness was defeated and where all sin, past, present, and future, was atoned for. And on top of that, this incredible action is what granted the Holy Spirit the legal means to do everything he does within our hearts and lives. It's framed as his ultimate sweeping spiritual victory that shatters that cycle of enslavement we looked at earlier. Which brings us to the final, incredibly powerful takeaway from our source text today. Stay ever grounded in what Christ has accomplished for us. It is the only way to avoid the path of sin. The author concludes that staying anchored in this spiritual reality, this victory of the cross, is a believer's absolute only defense against that insidious, creeping path of compromise. It's not about grouping the steering wheel and relying on your own willpower to fight off that one little sin. No, it's about relying on what was already accomplished for you. It requires constant grounding. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a thought, a challenge really, based on everything we've just unpacked. When you look at the seemingly small choices you're making every single day, those tiny compromises you might be rationalizing in your head, which path are you actually choosing to walk right now? Think about it. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll see you on the next explainer.